Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're here taping at the Hollywood Museum in this historic Max Factor building. It's fantastic. Our guests are performer Tom Rubin and playwright Kemp Powers. Writer, performer Tom Rubin grew up in New Jersey and graduated from Harvard. You've seen him on comedy venues like the Improv, the Comedy Store, the Ice House, and the Laugh Factory, and you may have even seen him in the courtroom if you had to be in court for something. And we'll tell you about that. He's moved on to a different type of stage with his one-person show. So, Tom Rubin, success guru. Why? Why from stand-up to this?
Why? Well, you know, it's stand-up was never an afterthought. It was always something I wanted to do.
Yes.
I became a lawyer to pay the bills.
Yes.
Because most comedians, have a hard time making a lot of money or any money. So unless you're really at the top, it's very difficult. So
It's like journalism. Same
you
thing.
bet. So I made sure I had some kind of career and became a lawyer, an entertainment lawyer.
Did you go to Harvard Law School?
I went to Harvard undergrad, and
Yes.
I moved out here right after Harvard, and I wrote a screenplay and tried to sell it, and and I had some odd jobs in the business, and then I said, I think I want something a little more stable, so I went to UCLA Law.
You did. That was fantastic. But what brought you from, you're an East Coast guy.
Yeah.
Harvard, New Jersey,
Yeah.
all of that being, part of what you were doing there.
Yeah.
Couldn't you get your script written there?
Well, I think you want to be if you want to be in the entertainment business, you want to be in the place where the entertainment business is.
Well, we always think of, the East Coast as entertainment too. Did you do comedy in New Jersey?
No, I left when I was, not intentionally.
I see.
I left when I was, right after college, so I was 22.
So were you doing any performing at Harvard? Was it anything like that? Was
No.
there any acting anywhere before this?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. When you're at Harvard, it's, they groom you to make lots of money in some kind of career, working on Wall Street or at maybe a big law firm
Right.
or as a management consultant, and I didn't want to do any of that.
And what were you
Maybe
doing
I should have.
there? What were you
I'm an
doing?
idiot. I should have gone to Wall Street. I'd be worth $1 billion now, and
Maybe, but law school is like acting, isn't it? Maybe that's where you learned it.
Not exactly. It's not quite as creative.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's really
It's
true.
a little dry.
So
also.
how much practice do you do on a personal level? And do you use your law degree?
Oh yeah, I practice law. Yeah,
Do
I
you?
continue
You
to
do?
practice law. Yes,
You do?
yes, I do.
Okay, so then tell us what kind of subjects you use, what you used at your comedy when you were doing stand-up.
Well, I mean, it could be pretty much anything that occurred to me. Some of it was, personal. Talk about anything from dating. I'm single, by the way, so.
So you could talk about that?
Do I talk? I did talk about that, but I talked about just really random topics, just things that would come to mind. With this show, I have really focused on a theme. Yeah. So.
Well, we're going to talk about that, but what I wanted to do was lead up to this as far as because this show that you're doing, Success Guru, doesn't change with venues. When you were in different comedy venues, does your material change for the audience?
Yeah, you would change on different nights because if you're going to go up for X number of minutes, you're going to do a certain set. If you do 20 minutes, or then if you have an hour or an hour and a half of material, you're going to do different.
I see. So you split it, but
Absolutely.
the audience doesn't change, like from one venue to the other. Is the audience younger, older, more ethnically mixed?
I think in the comedy clubs it tends to be younger, particularly these days. You know, back in the '80s when I actually wasn't doing stand up, but I was observing what was going on. It was a more, I think, a more demographically diverse audience. People were going to comedy clubs, and I think it's really become very young in the comedy clubs.
They still go.
They still go.
They still go.
But you're going to get people really young.
Okay, so you wrote all of the material for
Yes,
your stand-up.
yes.
That was all pre-written.
Absolutely.
And so Success Guru is totally all written too, because it's a script, it's a play. What's the difference when you get on stage for Guru? You're alone still.
Yes.
And then what about your set?
Well, it's similar because the show it's about an hour and 10 minutes, and it's essentially it's a satire. It's a comedy show, so there's a lot of jokes. I do impressions, but it all relates to the theme.
Okay,
so
let's tell us the theme.
The theme is, well, if you know who Tony Robbins is and those sort
Right.
of the gurus, there's lots and lots of them making lots of money. They're all about success. My mantra is the opposite. It's that failure is an option.
Oh.
So that's the whole theme based on.
But Tony Robbins doesn't think that.
I don't know whether he thinks it, but he doesn't tell you.
Right, maybe
it's not an
he
option
thinks-
for him, I can assure you.
That's right. Maybe
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
So, do you have a director that moves you around the stage? How do you do that?
I do have a director, Rocco Urbisi, who's a very established director. He directed George Carlin, and he's
So
a real
he
veteran.
has a comedy background, in fact.
Oh yeah.
So-
Rocco, very, very much so. So Rocco's been a big help, and but the direction of a one-man show, there's not a lot of you have to go here, you have to go there.
How do they? You're there for an hour. What do they do? They change the lights. Do they have music?
There is music just at the beginning and the end, and there's a PowerPoint slideshow.
So that.
It's just like a guru. It's like you're going in. Everybody wears a name tag.
Oh really?
Oh,
When
absolutely.
your
Gotta wear a name
audience
tag.
comes in with a name tag.
Got to wear a name tag.
Fabulous.
Yes. It's like going to one of these seminars that you normally pay a lot of money for. I'm much more reasonable. But when it comes to failure, I suppose I should charge less. But anyway, so there's the name tags. There's a slideshow that goes throughout, and I have an assistant who runs that show. But that's pretty much it. Other than that, it's just me, and I have to succeed or fail on my own merits on the show.
Do you
And
have
so
an
far it's been-
interaction with the audience?
There is interaction.
Is there?
Yeah, but there's not a huge amount. I don't bring people on stage.
No, I see.
You know what? I'm not out to embarrass people. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. It's about presenting the material and, sure, working with the audience, but none of this come up on stage and
Yeah.
humiliate yourself.
When you're doing stand-up, you don't have someone directing you, do you? Do you have a director?
When I just-
If you're in a comedy club?
No.
No, so this is like a total difference. This is like acting.
Stand-up comedy is acting because, first of all,
But I mean acting like something that's written for you that you have to act.
Yeah, but except the difference is you write the material. I would never. I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't want to act at some point.
Oh, I'm
going to
ask you that. You don't?
I've never had a real desire to read other people's material, but it might be interesting. I like to do my own. So, but it is acting because you have to basically take something that you put together and make it very natural. And the best stand-ups are very good at that. So.
But the stand-ups want to do a series. They want to be in films. They do commercials. Have you done any of that? Have you done any TV or
I haven't even tried. I've just never, honestly, I want to perform in front of people and make them laugh.
So how do you keep your acting chops up if you're practicing law during the day?
I practice the show.
You do?
And I do the show. Yeah, if you really know the material, then it should come.
The other thing is, in either situation, how do you know it's funny? How do you know, or in this case, like failure, there has to be some poignant part to it somewhere.
Yes, there is.
How do you
There
know
is.
that the audience is getting it? Do you feel it on stage?
Well, I have to tell you, going into this, it was this is kind of uncharted territory, doing a comedy show about failure, and I was very concerned about making the audience feel, oh my God, this is going to be depressing.
Yeah, right.
And I was very pleased to find out in my test shows that it wasn't. People were uplifted walking out of it. I had some people there who were out of work and they felt good.
That's what
So
I'm wondering.
I was, you know.
Test shows. I
Yes.
think you just said it. So
Yeah.
you do that with this piece that you're doing?
Absolutely. First time I did it, I had about 2 hours of material to test it.
Ah,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, but I have a pretty good hit rate I'm pretty good about knowing what's funny, but you can never be sure
Yeah.
until you do it. Sometimes you have a great joke where everybody just stares at you. Maybe it's not, then it's not a great joke.
I know. What do you feel it? Like, what do you do? Oh my God.
You move on.
You move on.
You move on. And if sometimes you have something that, oh, this isn't that funny, and they start laughing. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
But I don't question them. I say, what was funny about that? No,
No.
you just go with it.
You're
Of course
doing
it was.
So if they like the consensus is the next group will like it too.
All audiences are a little bit different, but generally speaking, if everybody or if a lot of people are laughing, it's funny. And if no one's laughing, you either completely screwed up the delivery or it just ain't funny.
And then you rewrite. You
Yes.
go in and rewrite.
Yes, you either put an X through it or a,
Where do you see Guru going? Do you see it going anywhere else?
I hope so. I mean, I want to perform this.
You're doing it in LA right now.
I have 8 shows coming
Right.
up, 8 Friday nights, starting tonight, actually. And I did it at the Santa Monica Playhouse the beginning of the year. I did 6 shows. And I
you
was
did.
well
So-
reviewed, thank you. So where's it
That's
going?
why you're here. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll
So where
take it.
is it going?
I would like to get enough traction with it through word of mouth to perform larger and larger venues. And I would love to tour the show and do just like Success Gurus. You know, they go to Indianapolis,
Right.
you know, 3-day conference with,
Right.
you know, succeed
Oh,
and
right.
be
And
positive.
fail.
Yeah, so if enough people, you know, if the word gets out, I could tour it. But I'm going to start local, as I'm obviously doing,
Yes.
and then, you know, try to take it.
Could anyone else play this Tom Rubin part? Could you send these little
Could it be a better me
voices
than me?
all over?
Oh, geez. No, you know, I suppose.
I mean, like if it went off Broadway and
Yeah.
you were doing something in Minneapolis, could someone else play the Tom Rubin part?
It would be a little weird to see it, but I
For you,
suppose
it would.
theoretically, it'd be like defending the caveman, which, you know, he has really farmed this thing out and done very well. But I like performing, so.
So you don't want anyone else to take your Tom Rubin spot.
If someone paid me enough money, they could be me any day of the week. Sure.
Okay, we're
Absolutely.
gonna see who can do that. Thank
Okay.
you so much for coming on,
Yes, my pleasure.
and don't go away because we'll be right back with playwright Kemp Powers. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're here at the Hollywood Museum on Highland. I'm with playwright Kemp Powers, who was born and raised in Brooklyn and was the recipient of the Knight Journalism Fellowship at the University of Michigan. He's a co-member of the Rogue Machine in Los Angeles, and you're a journalist. But how did you get to the stage? A journalist isn't a playwright.
You're right. A journalist is not a playwright. No argument there. I've always liked to enjoy doing creative writing. And I started out writing when I was going back to when I was in college. I wrote comic books.
Oh, you did?
Yes, independent comic books. I did a number of writing type projects that none of which result in any money, but I honed the skill.
Yes.
So it went from writing comic books in college to I received a USC screenwriting fellowship, so I kind of turned comic book script writing into screenwriting.
After Michigan?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I got here in Los Angeles. And then ultimately I found myself at Rogue Machine Theater as a storyteller. I'm not an actor.
Yeah, that's what I wonder. But do you sit on stage and tell the story?
Yeah, you stand there and you tell stories.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and so I was a company member as a storyteller, but when you don't act, it's like, well, what else can you do? And I had the skill as a writer, and I started writing short plays.
Is that when it started, when you came here?
Yes,
And so, did the journalism help?
absolutely. I mean, there's a certain amount of research that goes into my playwriting. Wherever it takes place, in this case in the 60s, I do exhaustive amounts of research.
And that's what it is, the research.
Yes.
The
reporting.
Yes, because a journalist needs facts.
Absolutely.
But a playwright can make up anything.
Yes, and my plays make up a lot, but they also combine a lot of their real world situations, their real, in this case, an actual event.
The one we're going to talk about, One Night in Miami.
Yes.
But you've done other things. Let's just go back to your transitioning, because you're author, writer, storyteller. Was there more than what you just told us to transitioning from one place to the other, or do you keep all three of them on the table?
I've always kept them all on the table.
Oh, you do?
I've always earned a living and done really well as a journalist, but I've also always enjoyed telling stories, both nonfiction and in the fiction realm.
And a journalist, print journalism?
Print, and obviously you have to make the transition to online like everyone has.
No.
But I started off in print with newspapers and magazines, and then transitioned into online.
So you say you're not an actor, but you're a performer because of this rant and rave. What is that?
I think there's a little bit of performative aspect to it. Rant and Rave is a really hit monthly series at Rogue Machine where they give 7 different writers a prompt, something like fear or love, and each of the writers has to write and then tell a 10-minute story based on that prompt.
Oh, so that's part of your actually being a part of the group.
Yes, I've done that like 7 or 8 times.
And it's a big award-winning series.
Oh, it's always a sold-out audience every single month. I think we're about to have the 41st installment.
Really?
Yes, so it's been going on for a few years now.
So they just give you a subject, and then you write the 10-minute thing, and then someone else reads it?
No, you get up on stage and read it.
You do it yourself?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Well, tell me what the moth is.
The Moth, well, the Moth is the granddaddy of all storytelling performance shows, and the Moth is, if anyone who's familiar with National Public Radio, it has a Moth podcast, a Moth Radio Hour,
right.
and it's very similar. The only difference is the Moth, there's no notes. So the Moth is really about the art of the raconteur, the expert storyteller.
Just the idea that you can tell a story no matter what?
Yes.
And when does that occur?
Well, there's Moth Story Slams here in Los Angeles, 3 a month, and then they have Moth main stages all over the country.
And
I've
you're
done
a part
several.
of it.
Yes,
You've been a part of it.
Yes, I did the Moth main stage in New York City. I did one late last year here in Los Angeles. I did one in Minneapolis. I'm doing another one in September back in New York. So
What would it be? What would you talk about?
usually they have a prompt, but it's more complex, the prompt. It's like stories of our most important life-changing moment. So it's a more complex prompt. And the same kind of thing where the writers, each of them, create a story around that prompt.
How long do you have to do that?
It's once again, it's a 10-minute story, but there's no notes.
But how long do you have before you get the prompt?
Oh, I usually have a month or two.
Oh, you do, so you can research it a
Oh,
little
absolutely.
bit. Oh, I see.
Absolutely.
And then because of your storytelling, is that how you got into Rogue Machine? Because
Yes.
it's a very tight little group of people.
That's
and where do
exactly.
they show? Where do they play?
We're on Pico. We're at Theater on Pico
right.
Boulevard in Mid-City. And that's literally how I attended the second. We're in 41. I attended the second Rant and Rave.
Wow, really?
And so, yeah, and I enjoyed it. And I said, well, I have a story to tell. And I told a story at the third. And shortly after was when they invited me to be a company member.
I was going to say, is it like an audition to be a company member?
I didn't realize it was.
But it was.
But I guess it is. They just want interesting creative types.
Do you do other things? Do you sweep the theater and do the lights and do all those kind of things?
Well,
that
everyone in the
companies
company
do?
volunteers,
That's
so
what I meant.
you might see me working the bar every now and
Oh,
then,
at
or
the
at the
bar.
box office.
One of the things that you are doing there is your play, One Night in Miami, which you've got to tell us about it because is it a made-up story?
Actually,
It's
a true
actually
story.
a true story.
Yes, February 25th, 1964. That's a very famous date. It's when Cassius Clay beats Sonny Liston to become heavyweight champion of the world. And the very next day is when Cassius announced officially that he was in the Nation of Islam,
And gonna change.
said change his name to Cassius X, and within a couple of weeks he'd be Muhammad Ali. But what a lot of people didn't realize is that because no one thought he would win that night, they didn't initially have a party planned. so that when Cassius won, he went back to the poor section of town, the black section of town, with Malcolm X and spent the night in the motel room with Malcolm X, Jim Brown, the football player,
Right.
and Sam Cooke, the R&B singer.
Oh, I kept thinking that he was that he was there with Sonny Liston. That's why I asked you.
No,
if it was made up. I was
no, no,
like, no.
Sonny wouldn't have been welcome in that room.
No, I don't think so. But Jim Brown,
Jim Brown and Sam Cooke, the soul singer.
unbelievable. What was Sam Cooke doing there?
Sam was a friend of Cassius Clay. A lot of people don't realize these guys were friends
gonna
with each other.
say.
Sam was a friend of Cassius Clay. He'd met Malcolm X independently, and there was a mutual shared friendship between these four men.
So how many people were there? Just
To
the four of them?
The four of them, and I think a couple of other Muslim ministers might have been in the room from the Nation of Islam.
How did you find out about it? Was it pretty much public? Or
It's public. It's in
quiet?
books, but I've always been a big fan of these guys. If you would have interviewed me when I was a teenager and said, who were your four favorite people at 19 years old, I would have said Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, Muhammad
Really?
Ali, and Jim Brown.
You're kidding.
So to find out that they were all friends is like accidentally discovering the Justice League of America. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
but-
it's just, I found just reading a book on the civil rights movement.
Did you ever get to meet them?
No,
None of them.
none of them.
Because Jim Brown must have been around. Oh,
No.
Sam Cooke must have been around.
Well, Sam
Muhammad
Cooke,
Ali still.
Sam Cooke died 4 months after this night.
Oh, he did.
Yes, and Malcolm was dead within a year.
Oh,
So
that was pretty. Yeah.
yeah, so it was, which once again added more gravity to the idea of creating a fictional story in this room, knowing what's going to happen to those guys.
So you knew what was going on. You made a fictional story.
Yes.
Okay, and you brought it to Rogue Machine. How
Yes.
did you get it? Them to perform it and to produce it.
Well, it started off when I had a lunch with the artistic director, John Flynn, and he asked me, he said, I'm a real big fan of your writing and your storytelling. Did you have any play ideas? I'd done several short plays at our short play festival.
Right.
And he pitched me an idea. He said he'd always been really interested in the civil rights movement. And I said, that sounds interesting, but I have a completely different idea. And I pitched him the idea for One Night in Miami. I said, it's a story that's been gestating in my mind for years that I really wanted to write, and I thought it would really reach a wide audience. And he couldn't believe, he didn't know that they knew each other either.
The same thing that we're talking about.
There's that
right.
initial shock, like they really
Did
hung
Sam
out that
Cooke
night.
sing?
Yeah, exactly. They hung out that night, seriously. So
Right.
he said, well, I would love to read the first draft of it. So I finished up my first draft.
Oh.
We did a reading of it. It needed work, of course, as most first drafts do, but it's something I began developing then.
How long are we going?
I'd say a year and a half
Oh,
total.
not too bad.
No.
You had to finish writing it.
Yes, I wrote it in about 6 weeks.
Oh.
And then, again, I had 10 years worth of research because I've been researching
right.
this. I was hoping to write it as a book, this story. So I've been
Which would have been
researching
great.
it. Yeah, I was researching it for a decade.
So a novel.
Yes,
A
I was
novel,
thinking of a novel.
So what do these guys talk about?
Well, I don't want to ruin too much of the play,
But what do
there's
they talk
there's
about?
key things that happen to each of these guys in their lives. Like I said, we know that Sam Cooke is going to write "A Change Is Going to Come," which
Right.
becomes one of the key songs of the civil rights era, and we also know he's going to be dead in just a few months. We know that Malcolm X is going to break away from the Nation of Islam, and his friendship with Muhammad Ali is going to end. We know that Cassius is going to become Muhammad Ali. We know Jim is about to become a movie star and quit the NFL to start being in films and do The Dirty Dozen.
You know that all after,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So,
yeah.
think about making this night the flashpoint to so many of those key things that are
Yeah.
about to happen,
That's pretty exciting,
and
isn't
having
it?
them challenging each other on some of these things.
Now, how do you get casting those people?
Casting was very hard, but I think we have the most phenomenal crew of actors. I mean, these guys. It was really important doing this play not to have anyone do an imitation.
Right.
So rather than have actors who try to imitate
Or
Ali,
do they look like him?
some of them do, but not necessarily. I mean, there's costumes and there's props, but the reality is it's about capturing the essence of these men, which is not an imitation, because we have several shared roles. In some of the cases,
you do?
different actors will be playing the same character on different nights.
On different nights. And that's part of Rogue Machine's idea of including everyone too. They like
Not with
to-
every play, but I mean, these guys are working actors.
Yeah.
And so one of them has a television series coming up, so we knew he couldn't stay for the whole run. So we had to multiple cast a few parts.
That's great. Who's directing?
Carl Cofield, who is from New York.
Carl, right.
Yes, and we met because in the development process, The second draft I submitted to the Classical Theater of Harlem in New York, and they selected it to be staged reading for their Future Classics series, and Carl was the director.
That's great.
So we met that way.
And then, is he out here all the time now?
Well,
No.
he came out just to direct this play.
Oh,
So he was here for 2 months.
Well, we have to go, but tell me what your next project is.
My next project is another play set about 20 years before this called The Two Reds.
The Two Reds, yeah. What is that?
Well, I'd say the one thing they both have in common is they have Malcolm in it. Only The Two Reds is when Malcolm is still Detroit Red. Another interesting fact a lot of people don't know is that when Malcolm was a teenager, he was a dishwasher in Harlem. And they called him Detroit Red because he was a black guy with red hair, and the other one was Chicago Red, who became Red Fox.
Is that right?
Yeah, so
they
they were two
reds.
redheads. So my story focuses on Detroit and Chicago Red, who would become Malcolm X and Red Fox when they were dishwashers.
Well, you have some great journalistic issues here, don't you?
Yeah.
There's wonderful.
There's some great stories out there.
Yeah. Thank you, Kemp, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
And thanks for being with us today. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, and email me, jaquinn1 at AOL.com.